Dear colleagues, thank you for joining us on day 2 on our training session, training series. Today we are talking about UN Sustainable Development Goals. You all have probably heard of this global initiative that drives the activities of governments, international organizations, companies, and individuals towards the most pressing issues globally and locally. But we as members of a research community will view UN Sustainable Development Goals from a particular perspective. This is not only a guide to achieve the most pressing goals for common good, but also an approach to make your research contribute to those goals and make a career move and make your institution stand out among others as well. So first things first, I'm gonna spend a few minutes talking about SDGs themselves, the way that approach is shaped in our database and converted into a toolkit that allows us to classify and identify publications mapped to a particular SDG or a few Sustainable Development Goals, and we'll then pass on to practice. We'll see how we as researchers and members of research community can use those data to drive us to more impactful research and research that contributes to achieving those SDGs, how that can help us find co-authors and secure international funding. So the SDGs, as you might have already heard, is another step of developing MDGs, Millennium Development Goals, which were expanded, enriched with more pressing issues related to the most common problems that we come across globally in social relations, in business, in provision of the most basic services to people, and in communication between us, between companies, countries, and so on, as well as taking care of the environment, the nature, the planet that we live on. So SDGs are a set of goals that further break down into specific tasks that need to be achieved by 2030, when this set of goals will be renewed. And this program has been approved by all the United Nations member states in 2015. So our role in that regard is being committed to helping the global community and the researcher community in particular to achieve those goals. That is one of the commitments that our company has officially made. And since 2015, Elsevier has been investigating how research activities and representation of research data can be tailored in a way to make it more transparent and make it useful for driving SDGs. This is the timeline, which I'm not gonna go into detail, but you can see that there were quite a number of contributors to the project of bringing research activities and SDG-related endeavors together. We have, for instance, ranking compilers who first came up with the THE pioneering in social impact rankings in around 2018, 2019. The rankings being based, among other things, on the Elsevier mapping of 11 SDGs that first were aired in 2017. We have had quite a number of partners since then that helped us develop this technology, mapping more publications, more articles and reviews and books to most of the SDGs that are out there. About that in a minute. And introduce more quantitative tools to assess institutions and countries' contribution to each of the Sustainable Development Goals. I would say a landmark event was in 2020, when we have had our algorithms cover 16 out of 17 SDGs. The 17th one, that is titled Partnerships for the Goals, is a very interdisciplinary one, which essentially powers the rest of the SDGs. And it is really hard to identify which of the publications is related to that particular goal. Other than that, we have a set of approaches based on both data analysis, analysis of keywords and machine learning, as well as experts' contribution that help us help us map the content that we have covered in Scopus to each of the Sustainable Development Goals for the users of our database. You can see, for instance, those mappings beyond Scopus. When you open an article, or when you search for article in Scopus, you can identify them by keywords, but in order to empower our users even more to benefit from these mappings, we have created a free open layer of SciVal that is another analysis tool that might not be available within your institution, but this direct link will always available no matter what kind of subscriptions your university is currently has. So if you are starting to analyze research output, that is a good place to start and view each of the Sustainable Development Goals from research analysis perspective. Now, it's just I wanted to stress that this was a collaborative endeavor. It is really a challenging task to have millions and millions of papers mapped to something that cannot be simply worded or defined as complicated as a Sustainable Development Goal, each of which breaks down into few sub-goals and tasks and priorities. So among key partners that helped Elsevier fulfill this commitment is Aurora Universities Alliance, Auckland University, and Southern Denmark University. The first version of the mapping looked like this. It was a combination of keywords that were carefully selected to make the outputs, the research outputs found using that query relevant to each of the SDGs. However, if you remember our yesterday's talk, it is a common problem that if you don't select the right terms, or if you select only a few terms, whereas there are many more that are relevant to your cause, you might come across error, type 2 error. So that is a false negative. You will lose a lot of papers that otherwise would be helpful to make your research hits or your selection of papers more representative. So for the next version of the query, we have had queries this long, consisting of hundreds and hundreds of terms and term combinations. That is when a machine learning approach was introduced and enhanced the expert analysis, which helped us both remove false negatives and false positives for the selection, and also helped us optimize the use of this mapping, make it less resource consuming in terms of quantitative resources, of course. Now, the recent version for 2022 update, not much was changed. The same search query and ML algorithms. A few tweaks helped us improve the search results and the selection of search terms for SDG 3, which is good health and well-being. Also, when you start analyzing research output of your university or your colleagues, or maybe the entire country or the world, you'll see that good health and well-being, SDG 3, is the most research intensive sustainable development goal among all. And for the most latest version, we have had a lot of improvements, particularly in regarding a few SDGs, such as number 1, 4, 5, 7, and 14. For instance, number 1, no poverty, a really pressing issue. Well, personally saying, would assume that achieving this sustainable development goal, if you ask me, would empower the rest of them, because in many places around the world, poverty is something that is bringing the standard of living and achieving other goals behind. That's why we'll talk about research related to no poverty SDG in more detail just in a few minutes. And one important improvement that happened earlier this year is that these mappings, these queries, were optimized to run even faster as in Scopus. As you will see, it takes just as little time as a normal search in Scopus to identify papers related to a particular sustainable development goal. Now, if you want to see the details, how exactly this or that sustainable development goal pool of publications is enriched, you can see the original queries and methodologies in our repository using the link that I put in the slide deck. You will see the search terms and ML machine learning methodology utilized, as well as some additional comments as to how this methodology was developed. Also, this tracking and documentation was performed yearly, so you can access also the earlier version of the same methodology that I've just been talking about in the past few minutes. Now, speaking of SDGs and how they are represented in Scopus. If you open advanced search and look on the right, you'll see all those logical operators and then below field codes that we have been talking about with Saida yesterday. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the panel, you will see these pre-generated queries. Well, that is how Sustainable Development Goals are represented in Scopus. If you click, just as you click on the operators or field codes, you will get that pre-generated query populate your your search query string. Those terms will just appear and as a ready-made, ready-to-use query. And if you click search, you will get a respective publication set that matches a particular UN Sustainable Goal. Of course, as with any other field or any other combination of fields and operators, this can be further expanded, specified with any other field code, for instance, identifying research papers that fall into SDG number 1 or any other number, plus research area and country and type of publication and any other field codes. Well, we'll see that in the practice part of my presentation. Now, let me first, before we switch to the visual interface of Scopus, let me first share a few practical cases which I put into the slide deck for an obvious reasons. I believe that many of you might be asking yourselves, why should I care? What's the reason myself as a researcher or research leader, research manager, why should I be interested in this particular classification of papers? Well, one obvious reason has been already said. So SDGs is something of global importance, something that we as humans need to address together for the better lives of ourselves and of course of future generations. But from an academic perspective, from the perspective of doing better, more impactful and more useful research, UN SDGs may work as a map that will help you identify those areas that will both make you stand out, produce helpful, needed, demanded research, get recognized by your colleagues around the world, your institution, get your institution make your institution stand out as well, and finally attract or improve your chances of attracting international funding to your research cause. So case 1, here I will show how research related to Sustainable Development Goals is more impactful compared with the rest of the publications around the world. For this demonstration, I will be using Cyvel that I have mentioned already. So that is an analytical solution that is based on Scopus data. But well, basically the data are the same with some minor differences. So we are analyzing the most recent papers. I have taken a 5-year window. You may ask why. The reason is that, well, that is the window that is used for a lot of analytical exercises, evaluation, among others for global rankings. Most of the global rankings will be using a 5-year publication window. Next, I'm not using any publications from 2023 for this analysis because the year has not ended yet. So whichever citation or publication metric we pick, it will be unstable because some of the papers are yet to appear, some of the papers of this year are yet to be cited, and that happens at different paces. Normally, the bigger the journal, the faster it can afford to prepare all the data and send it to us. So it would be fair to evaluate publications of this year, 2023, later in 2024. But well, it was a cut in. Let's get back to our major topic. So we have the world portfolio with over 18 million publications in this 5-year window. And these publications are cited at a particular rate. We can calculate an average citation rate for all of the publications in the world. That is for that, we are using a metric named FWCI. The world average is 1. And that is what's important to remember when we use this metric to compare our own portfolio or the portfolio of our institution or a country. And on this slide, that's what I'm doing. Turkey's portfolio over the same period of time includes around 300 publications of all types in all disciplines, and these publications are cited slightly above the world average. That is good. Well, and we need to remember that when we will get to analyzing papers that fall into a specific SDG. So far, we need to remember that Turkish publications on average are cited 2% more frequently than the rest of the publications or all of the publications in the world. That's what we need to remember. That will be our benchmark. 1.02, 2% above the world average. Now, we need, before passing on to analyzing Turkish academic output in more detail, another brief cut in, a few more words about how FWCI is calculated. So FWCI, this value, is something that helps us compare different entities with each other. Institutions, universities, companies, countries, groups of countries and international organizations, entire world, or smaller entities like groups of researchers, for instance, can be quite safely compared with this using this metric because it uses normalization. It compares similar publications to similar publications, and similar means that those publications are of the same year, the same type, such as article or review or book chapter and some others, and of the same discipline, discipline as defined by ASJC, All Science Journal Classification, the system that we are using by default in Scopus and in Cybele. FWCI is also quite easy to interpret. As I said, any value that is above 1 is above world average, and values below 1 are below world average. That is as simple as that. So, with that in mind, we proceed to analyzing the portfolio of the Turkish academic community in more detail, and we'll see how SDG papers impact on the academic community. If we look at all of the papers published by Turkish researchers over this 5-year period, we'll see that their citation rate, the third column here, field-weighted citation impact, is better, and in most of the cases much better than that of all of the publications overall, regardless of their mapping to a particular SDG or SDGs. So if you remember, Turkey's average FWCI over 5 years used to be 1.02, whereas whichever Sustainable Development Goal related publications would take, we have values above it, but for a couple of exceptions. And most of the citation rates would be significantly above it, 120, 120, 158, and even 221, which means 121% above the world average for SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. The same would be fair if we look at the rest of the SDGs in a second. Again, we can see that SDG-related papers are way better cited than the country's average, 158, 121, and so on and so forth. So all in all, we can safely say that most of the SDG-related papers are much impactful from the academic perspective as regards the Turkish community, but for the publications in SDG 4 and 5, which are at around the same citation rate level as all the publications of the country. So that was to demonstrate that publishing, or at least considering publishing on something SDG related, might be beneficial for your career, for making your research recognized and stand out. Now, in more detail, how about understanding the relations between SDGs and research related to them and disciplines? Because one can imagine that in SDG 3, good health and well-being, there must be mostly medical sciences and health sciences research that is impactful. However, it's hardly imaginable that we have a lot of humanities research there, but who knows? It's important to consider both dimensions, your focus of interest and in terms of subject areas, and sustainable development goals that you're considering to focus on, to find some sort of an overlap where there is proven impact of a research body in a specific subject area that is related to SDGs. And we can do that simply with the same analytical approach. If we look at the world research landscape, we can see that, for instance, in the no poverty SDG, number 1, most of the research areas in social sciences and economics would be cited above the world average. By the way, no, that's not quite true. For social sciences, yes, and for economics, econometrics, and finance, it would be publications that were published specifically in economics and econometrics journals, whereas finance is not that of a is a less relevant subdomain of knowledge as concerns SDG 1. We can observe similar effects in the field of engineering and energy when SDG 7 is concerned. SDG 7, affordable and clean energy. This is again the world's research portfolio, and we can see that unlike SDG 1, all of the major subdomains of engineering and energy are when related to SDG 7, are cited way better than world average. Just as a reminder, the world average is 1.00. So we have a significant difference of at least 17% for general engineering and 12 in energy miscellaneous, but other gaps are margins are even bigger. We can observe similar effects for the Turkish academic community, but this is where one needs to be more careful, because some of the subdomains might not be that relevant to the SDG cause, or the research might not be recognized globally for all sorts of factors one can imagine. Still, we can see that for the majority of subdomains, be that sociology, geography, education, economics, or econometrics, SDG-related research would be cited better than on average in the world or in the domain in general. The same would be true for the Turkish academic community if we look at SDG 7 and the same subject domains, energy and engineering. The research rates for SDG-focused publications would be tens of % higher than the world average. For some of the directions, the effect would be even bigger than for the world. For instance, for nuclear energy and engineering or fuel technology. Now, well, that was an example of how focusing on SDG and a particular research area might help produce more impactful and recognized research. Now we are passing on to the grants topic. It's just common knowledge and common sense that those research areas, disciplines or multidisciplinary areas that are better cited also are better funded. So we can use this SDG toolkit to try to identify successful cases of funding, and therefore try to either tailor our research to try to secure funding from the same resource, or to switch our research priorities to that area that already has successful research cases, research funding cases. But first things first. So to identify potential research funding directions, we will need to get back to Scopus interface and pick one of the pre-generated queries. Once we get it, we can use these research these search terms or keywords from the publications to try to narrow down our publication selection to those related to UN Sustainable Goals. The same can be done in relation to funding opportunities. And for this piece of analysis, I'm using another database of ours, Funding Institutional, which is essentially a Scopus for finding active grant offerings. That is a search engine that collects data from thousands of funders worldwide. And I'm here just using the most common search terms related to the first UN SDG, no poverty, to try to find relevant funding opportunities. However, this search is for demonstration only and might be incomplete or might not match your exact research interests if you are if your interests are somehow in the field of eliminating poverty. So for a more complete query, you might need that detailed description of SDG mappings that we have on our repository, and you can access it using the link below. So if we combine these few search terms with the limitation of applicant citizenship, Turkey will find currently 292 funding opportunities. However, this is a select is a standalone solution which might not be available with your institution. That is not a problem because you can identify potential funding opportunities, analyzing those cases which are already there in Scopus. For that, you just need to find the right keywords and add funding search in your query. So instead of using potentially open opportunities, we are switching to the successful cases, and we will go to Scopus and look for researchers that have already secured funding for their studies. For that, again, we will be using these ready-made queries that address a particular sustainable development goal. And we will add a clause to our search that will limit the results to Turkish authors only. Of course, if we are interested in a global experience or experience of a particular institution or another country, we can do that too. But for this demonstration purposes, I am only limiting the selection of papers to Turkish publications only, which means publications of authors with a Turkish affiliation. If we do that, and we add a clause that has sustainable development in the funding data of each of the publications, we will get 36 papers, most of which are recently published, that have been funded by some funding body. By clicking on a specific publication, we can see what it is about, and if it somehow is close to what you are doing professionally, you can try to further investigate the case, read this paper, see what kind of findings are there, and what kind of requirements these researchers had to complete to secure the funding. And you can get all those details because all of them are in the funding data field. You can see that, well, it was this piece of research was funded by Tubitalk. You have the grant number and an active link to further explore this particular funding case. Now, we can switch to Scopus and do a little more experimenting with the SDGs, finding experts, finding potential journals, and of course, funding. Let me switch to my browser. Just give me a second. There we go. So we are on the home page, and to look for papers that are somehow mapped to a sustainable development goal, we go straight to advanced document search. And we start generating our query by clicking on one of the pre-generated samples. So if we are still interested in SDG number 1, no poverty, and click on it, we get this selection of keywords and keywords enhanced by wildcards. I think I'm sure you remember this sign from our yesterday's meeting. Now, I would like to enhance this search with a clause that will get us only publications that have reported some kind of a funding. And for that, I'm clicking on this funding clause, and I guess I will be just using all of the fields, sponsor and number and acronym, all of the labels, and we need to enter something. So I would just put the word research, but of course, if you, let's say, would be searching for an exchange program, or if you're looking for a more specific kind of a grant, you can experiment with the search terms. The only thing that we cannot do is to leave this clause open to get all of the funding data that are out there. So we need to put something. So I'm putting this generic word research to try to get as many results as possible. So once again, what we have done, we have picked all of the papers that relate to SDG number 1, which we know these papers being related to an SDG are already very impactful, well cited, frequently read, and so on. And we have limited our search to only those papers that have some funding details, which means that those papers were sponsored by some organization. Now, we can go view a particular paper straight ahead. Aha, well, hello, Scopus. There is a technical issue that has not been addressed, so I will think of a workaround on how to demonstrate it. Look, we just, there must be some technical issue on the database side. We can see the references, but we can't see the rest of the data. Well, it's not a problem. We can deal with that. But before that, let's say I want to study first local experience. I want to see what kind of studies, if there were any, what kind of cases are there within the Turkish community only. So I'm adding another clause and I'm saying, and affiliation country and Turkey. We have 35 documents that have a some sort of funding indication that are related to SDG number 1 and that were authored or co-authored by Turkish researchers. And we can look at one of the papers to see what kind of type of funding is there. I think you can recognize this one from my presentation. I'll open it once again. The problem is that we cannot access the data right now. This is a temporary error, but we have to deal with it. But we can go back and go to the publishers page. And here, if we go to the acknowledgements part, sometimes it would be just funding, whatever, you will see this indication and an active link to the grant description on TÜBİTAK's website. Now, one more case. What if we were looking for a journal to publish with? Well, it is very easy. Again, a journal that focuses on a specific sustainable development goal. Let's say, well, again, we are taking something from my slide deck to make it more consistent. Let's take sustainable development goal number 7, clean and affordable and clean energy. Let's look for the papers that match this selection of keywords. There are so many of them. So let's limit our search to recent years only. And we can go and analyze results. Don't be surprised by this downward curve, because well, year 2023 hasn't ended yet, and 2024 hasn't even started. So it will change with time. What we are interested here is, of course, a funding sponsor, how often they are funded on average by these institutions, but also we will be interested in sources if we're looking to a journal to publish with. So we have this selection of titles that Scopus covers, sorted by default by the number of documents that fall into this sustainable development goal. So maybe we can keep the year selection as it is, and then go to this tiny but very remarkable link. We can compare top sources in SDG 7 by their metrics and select the best journal to publish with. Well, we can see that all of these journals are quite remarkable. They have a site score, the energy 14.9, that means 14.9 citation per publication in the past 4 years. Their number of articles varies from year to year, and one important feature to look at is percentage of review years, of review articles. If you are publishing an experimental and empirical paper, you might want to focus on those journals for whom that is a primary type of publication. Whereas if you're publishing a review, you might want to select a journal for which it is a common type of a publication. So for that cause, energies with almost 15% of review papers, that would be a good choice. One more thing to pay attention to is number of documents by year. We see that all the journals are growing, but it is more or less organic growth year over year. If you have the number of publications multiplying by 2 or 3 or more within a short period of time, within a year or two, that might be an indication that the journal lost its quality in the best scenario and has become predatory in the worst case scenario. But that's another topic which I'm sure we'll discuss in more detail in our future meetings. But so far, let me just remind what we have done. We have taken a pre-made query that leads us to SDG-focused papers, which again, we know are already more impactful than the rest of their publications in their respective research areas. We have limited our search to recent years, and we have selected the most productive journals in that selection. We could have added more, or we could also have investigated these journals by clicking the link and going to their respective pages in the sources part of Scopus. I think this is it for what I have planned for the demonstration, and Saide and I will switch to our planned Q&A session. Dear colleagues.
Thanks, Kirill. It was a great presentation. And now I'm stopping the recording, then we can pass to the Q&A.